Welcome back to UX Evolved. I'm Eric Ellis, and today we're taking on a different angle of UX research in the AI era, one that most podcasts miss entirely. While everyone debates whether AI will replace individual researchers, there's a deeper question. How do you transform research operations across entire organizations when AI is reshaping everything from data collection to insight synthesis? I'm joined by Dan Zola, who has spent years building and scaling research functions across organizations ranging from startups to Fortune 100 companies. Currently driving UX research at Google, Dan focuses on optimizing AI products and shaping how teams design with intelligence in mind. In this episode, you'll learn from Dan why internal research comes first. Before you can intelligently interview customers, you need to understand your organization's challenges, growth areas, and internal dynamics. The irreplaceable human skills in AI-assisted research. While AI can transcribe and summarize, it can't read body language, pick up on hesitation, or know which follow-up question unlocks the real insight. How to operationalize research with AI as your co-pilot. From templating communications to maintaining uniformity across teams, Dan reveals where AI genuinely improves research operations and where you must trust but verify. From his early years managing teams at MTV to his current work at Google, Dan's career has centered on connecting data, empathy, and design to create smarter, more human digital experiences. Dan, welcome to UX Evolved. Dan Zola, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to UX Evolved. It's been a long time. I feel like I say this to every guest. It's been a long time, but I love this podcast because it gives us a chance to those who I haven't talked to in a while catch up. So welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Your research background is prolific, so I'm really excited to learn more, especially in this age where, as Milwaukee Zozel told me in the last episode, man, what really is this role anymore? And she gave some great insights from someone who is just starting her career, really four years into her career. You are not. You're more seasoned, are you not?
I am a little more than 4 years into my career. Yes, I don't stop and do the math, but it's been, someone once told me we make the road by walking. And that's certainly been my experience with regard to my career. I started in ostensibly in MTV, where I was doing digital production. And then my wife and I had this crazy idea to leave New York City and move to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where I quickly learned they didn't have MTV. But what they had was healthcare and lots of it. So I got a job working at Quintiles, which became IQVIA, and really went off from there on this road of UX research and discovery, which took me to bandwidth. Started my own agency for many years. That worked out great until it didn't, and we hit COVID. And now I find myself I have a contract role at Google, which has been wonderful. I'm a small part of a large, brilliant machine. Lots of great people, smart, talented people there, and I get the opportunity to conduct qualitative research, chatting with them about their products and processes, how to make them better.
We'll get to Google for sure. You've led research engagements. You've walked the walk, as you say, from 400 employees up to Google scale. I don't want to dive too far into AI first, but walk me through how you approach establishing good research practices and operations, especially at an organization, a small one or one getting started, where that systemic flexing of muscles just doesn't exist yet. What do you do when organizations really never had systemic user research? How do you get started there?
Well, it certainly helps if it has been established, but more to the point, it helps if the leadership sees the value in its potential. And certainly that was the experience. You mentioned 400 people. That was about the number when I was at Bandwidth. They're a telecom company. And they had great, and still do great leadership that believed in and valued and exemplified the value in conducting user research. I was thinking about this. A lot of it has to do with talking to people. whether it's in person or chat, Zoom, and just introducing yourself for starters. Hey, I'm Dan. I'm the new guy. I'm leading the UX research effort in this, and then following up with individual one-on-ones. Hey, I'd love to chat with you about that to learn more about what you're doing. But steadily and somewhat regularly, you set up one-on-one meetings with key folks from certainly the leadership, if you're able, depending on the size of the company, but also across many departments. Certainly product, yeah, for sure, and dev, tech, yes, but also sales and marketing, customer service, and you're talking to people one-on-one to learn their take on the current state of things, their take on what are the biggest problems facing the company, what are the biggest growth areas in your opinion, what have we done before, what have we not, and all of a sudden, in chatting with people, you start to paint a picture of internally of what's happening in the company, and you're conducting UX research of that company, of your new company, by doing these qualitative interviews. And then after you chat with 10, 15, 20 people, you report back your findings. Hey everyone, it's great meeting you all over the past couple of months. I'd love to get together and share with you what I've learned. And then you share back and present to them, and chatting with everyone I've heard. And in so doing, you get buy-in, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense, because that's what they just told you over the past couple of months.
Right.
And it demonstrates a couple things. One, interactions, that you're good at talking to people. Two, that you understand more about the organization and their challenges. And three, you've started to put together a roadmap, and you've all of a sudden you've gotten buy-in, because you're sharing back with them their thoughts and feelings, and you're looking at it rather objectively, because you're the new person, and that helps establish a roadmap, which you can then validate and move on and share with customers and go from there.
It's funny. I have a follow-up question. I think you answered it for me. And I wonder if the reason that you're taking this very relationship driven, very humanistic approach to building that foundational roadmap means that perhaps you've seen it not work that way. And when it does not get going that way, perhaps user research feels a little less value oriented or more transactional. The relationships haven't been established. Have you seen it where those foundational humanistic, let's get started at the let me know you level didn't happen? And what was the result?
There's that, acronym of the HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion, where
Yeah.
there's kind of a mantra that's handed down that we're going to do it this way because it's what Joe or Mary wants to have done. Because eventually you're going to have to talk to customers. Eventually you're going to have to interview customers. You're going to have to put surveys in the field and look at customer data. And you can't possibly be expected to do that intelligently if you don't first understand what's happening internally.
Look at your track record, over 1,000 customer interviews, 225% reduction in research cycle time. These are organizational level transformation numbers. And I wonder what it takes to achieve that kind of systematic improvement in research operations. We've started here with the get to know your base, establish a research driven culture. Then what? Operationalize that.
Well, these days, to operationalize it, it does require AI. I mean, requires is a strong word. It it takes some manual grunt work out of the process. All right, what's the email I have to send now? What's the communication I have to send now? Who do I reach out to? By having AI help write a script for stuff like that, it also templatizes it, and not in a bad way. It creates uniformity, so that every time you have a project, the other stakeholders know, oh, it's time. I expect to see this kickoff note that I get from Dan, or I expect to see, oh, I know there'll be this follow-up meeting every time. I know there'll be this script review every time. And that kind of uniformity that you can share with your team. So it's not just stuff coming from Dan, but from the entire team. This is how UX research is handled in our organization across the board. That being said, there's certainly room for human touch. And I think a lot of it comes out of those initial conversations. I had one person tell me once, they said, We make it really difficult for people to give us money. That sounds like a pretty big problem. Let's fix that. In that case, it was an e-commerce piece of a membership site that had difficulty with getting membership and re-upping membership. I'm like, well, all right, that sounds like a pretty good place to start. So it's about those initial conversations, but it's about interpreting those tea leaves to learn what's the best path forward and what does that look like in the first 6, 9, 12 months, 1, 2, 3 years. And that's where you begin and that's how you move forward.
Had a research lead on my team years ago who loved to research the margins, loved to go into those little crevices to go find the places that no one wanted to touch, the angry customers or the weird blips that would show up on a dashboard that no one thought to investigate because it really didn't seem to be connecting the dots to the bottom line. I wonder if you've noticed that as well. Do you see the margins as being the places that maybe AI by itself doesn't do a very good job of just contextually, intuitively running investigation into what's going on?
Truthfully, I mean, margins can be impactful, but at the end of the day, I think they're outliers for a reason. And I used to tell my clients when I was at Sway, I'm in the 80% business. I want to find out what 80% of your audience or customers needs, wants, or has trouble with. And by all means, after you solve that, jump into those margins and those outliers. It's an interesting source of information, but you know what's great for that is net promoter score, not the numbers. A scale of 1 to 10, don't get me started on that. But the qualitative, why did you give us this number? That is a treasure trove of information. And you've got it by the hundreds, if not thousands, depending on the scale of your organization. And to go through that and to go through, say, 1,000 NPS records and see, oh, 60% of the people have a problem with login. It's a treasure trove of information to go through. It's usually there before you walk in the door, so you can hit the ground running. If you're talking about being new to an organization, and it's a great way to further that internal consensus because you're not saying, "Hey, I think we should do this." You're saying, "Hey, our customers think we should do this." 68% of them said we should do that. 42% of them said we should do that. And NPS data is a great way to get that started.
In today's world where qualitative data doesn't mean you're spending hours and hours upon days and days trying to find thematic,
Mm.
it's right there. It's AI saying, look, I can find the themes for you and I can do it in a matter of minutes.
That may be the biggest improvement that AI has made in my research life in recent, let's say, years. Because, I was doing that kind of work when I was at IQVIA, and that was, whatever that was, 5, 7 years ago. And that was very much by hand, going through records, scanning. Maybe you could do like a control F and search for every time they said this word, but you're still aggregating records, manually in Google Sheets or whatever you're doing. But now to be able to take that and dump it into, say, Gemini and say, what are the top 5 complaints? And show me the numbers. That has been a wonderful addition, certainly to me as a researcher.
What do you do with those days? You as a professional, you get them back. You're not doing the tediousness in your role. What do you get to do instead?
Well, I'm still talking to people. I'm still interviewing people. There's software out there that can interview people for you. I don't yet ascribe to that. I'd like to be able to speak with people. I like to be able to hear the intonation in their voice, learn about the commonality of, responses, so that when I do go back and look at answers, I can know, well, actually, I know the second person mentioned that, and the fourth person also mentioned. And so I don't like AI as a substitute for good old fashioned interviewing. And I'd argue that there has been, in a world where sometimes there's some scrutiny about results and scrutiny about the authentic data, it's hard to fake an interview. It's hard to fake a 1 hour interview with a participant about how they use a particular software. That's real data, and that's data that you can trust. One of the reasons why I love conducting real one-on-one qualitative interviews.
Milwaukee agrees with you. I remember her saying in her episode of the story she told of a interviewing hoteliers who would say to her, "Look, I'm not a technologist. You've got to understand my position." And that kind of walk a mile in my shoes moment, I'm just not sure could have come out contextually in a AI moderated study. I think you have to hear between the scripts there.
Yeah, that's true. And that manifests itself both in the conversation, but also, sometimes in the visit. If you're able to be on site, if you're able to see, how they work in their office or in their hospital system or on the floor, and see what they go through. I remember I had one set of customers. They were in the automobile industry, and everyone was in this little tiny crowded space. And it was always this small space with like boxes piled everywhere and old technology and an outdated computer. And the current system we had at the time was just like tiny lines and lines to scour through. And I'm like, just make it bigger. These folks they're in this tiny space all day. They're looking on these small monitors all day, having to look through minutia. There's very little substitution for that kind of research where you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with the customer, with the user, with the patient, whatever it is your industry is.
We're seeing a theme between these two, yours and Milwaukee's, of the ethnographic value, the qualitative value that still is very human centered. You're now leading usability studies with Google and with software engineers at Google, and they're using AI tools. It's meta. You're researching how people use AI while potentially using AI in your research process. I find myself going through that part of my head too as a designer. Wait a minute, where am I in the room and where do I sit? What's that as a researcher to use AI but be researching AI at the same time?
Short answer is it's great. I am meeting mostly with software engineers, but every once in a while, I have the privilege of working with the UX research team itself. So I am a UX researcher conducting research of other UX researchers and how they use software AI. That is super meta. So oftentimes, if you're doing research, oftentimes participant will ask you a question back about the content. And I don't always know about the content. I barely know the vocabulary that they're using. In my mind, I translate it to kind of like Star Trek speak,
Sure.
you know?
Technobabble.
Yeah, technobabble. Like, well, will we be able to reconfigure the main deflector dish to emit a tachyon burst? I don't know. So, the answer is always, well, do you want to be able to reconfigure the main deflector dish to emit a tachyon burst? Oh, sure. Let me tell you why. Great. So that kind of discussion gets kind of surreal at times, but as I said, they are a smart group, and it's privileged just to be a small part of trying to make that organization better.
Those best practices that you bring, the experience that you bring to the table, it sounds to me like it gets to the heart of what the practice is, that perhaps even with the advent of AI, there are still foundational best practices. Don't lead the witness when you're interviewing. You're there to, as you say, ask the questions and sometimes play a little bit of a psychologist role rather than trying to say something that maybe they want to hear. Is that perhaps also the future of this discipline, that it's trying to keep the common heuristic best practices alive and thriving so that there isn't sort of an AI washing of the future of the discipline going forward? That's really my fear. I don't know that I would hire a researcher to do tedious tasks, but I would certainly hire a researcher who knows best practices like the back of their hand.
I hope we can maintain those best practices. There are a couple of points that I hit on whenever I chat with a participant, and they usually get a laugh. They usually get a chuckle. And the first is, I am not here to test you in any way. And the other point is, I want to reassure them that I didn't build this product, I didn't design it. Nothing you say about it will hurt my feelings. because there is very much a feeling, and it's part of all of us. It's part of being human beings, and it's part of the reason why I think it's very important to have third party objective research, whether that's a separate group or a separate agency or a separate division of a company that is broken off from design. I've seen that firsthand when a designer is conducting their own research and, oh, tell me what you think about this design. Oh, I don't like it for these reasons. Oh, well, you just don't understand it. Let me explain it to you. So all the more reason to have that kind of segmentation, I think, between research and design.
Yeah, really great point. I'm sure that in this meta moment that you're having at Google, the depth of the team's knowledge, the researchers' knowledge, and how they conduct their research is front and center. And in an AI world where junior designers, junior researchers rather, might rely more heavily on automated tools, do you find yourself inserting yourself and going, don't forget about intuition, don't forget about the best practices? Are you coaching out maybe some AI habits that aren't good ones, or are we too early in the evolution for that?
Haven't seen that. I have seen certainly that, the ability to coach, and mentor junior researchers on best practices, to be sure. There's one person on my team, great individual, who kept saying something like, "So is that clear?" And every time they said it, I'm like, "You can't say that because it's so easy for them just to say yes." I had a leading question come across my virtual desk just the other day, and there was something to the tune of, "Would you like to have clear visibility into all facets of this program so that you can know what's happening at all times?" And I'm like, who wouldn't want that? Let's see if we can rewrite that question to be a bit more objective. What are your expectations when it comes to visibility? So I talked about in those two examples, yes, coaching, junior researchers, but also coaching very senior program and product managers.
Was going to be my follow-up question. It's got to go the other way as well, right?
It does. And especially when, with regard to research, there are a lot of people in that room, probably a virtual room, but there are, a lot, which is wonderful. A lot of people vested in the outcome of this research. They have a lot of concerns. They have a lot of items they want to make sure they get good information on. I had this question served up in a survey before I came to the project, but it was basically the most leading question I've ever seen. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was basically something like, "Hey, this other group had plans to make this other product that they will do and they will pay for it. Do you want them to do it?" And that got a 90% response. Yes, we want, we think this other group should do this other work that they said they would do and pay for. Yes, 90%. And I thought to myself, who are the 10% who said no? But that was an incredibly leading question, which led to, of course, this organization building out that product, which failed miserably because no one really wanted it. Research has real impact, especially in the positive, and can be in the negative if the questions aren't written correctly, properly.
Working at a place like Google, I got to believe that their data centricity is pretty dang strong. That sort of find yourself defending uh, qualitative only research, or do you, in other words, where does the quant come in at a place like Google, especially in an age where AI is just making it increasingly easy? The barrier to get to that data is so much lower than in the past that you can really conduct that kind of research and combine the two? Or do you still see, look, there's just so much gold to mine on the contextual qualitative side that you really still find yourself sitting squarely in that space?
Yeah, it's the latter. There's a lot of information there to mine. I've been in this role for just over a year and change. And so we move in 3 week sprints. So let's say somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, because it's been a little over a year, 20 studies. And I've had someone come back once, 1 out of 20, and say, well, that's not and it wasn't even like the nature of qualitative versus quantitative. It was arguing the qualitative point this participant had nice things to say here, but like later said bad things here. So why would you put them in the affirmative? Maybe they're really in the negative, stuff like that. But to my point of all that, it's pretty rare, at least in my experience. Again, I think that's a testament to the caliber of the folks I'm working with.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit towards the organizational side of research and maybe how that's evolved over the last few years.
Mm.
If you were asked or tasked to start up a research org from scratch and looking at the staff that you might want to bring on to populate that practice, and let's say a mid-level SaaS company, are there skills that, looking back in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that you'd go, gotta have, absolutely crucial to get things moving, compared to now where perhaps some of the, dare I say, lower level or junior level tasks just are now gone because you can automate them away? And what is that saying? What does that mean?
There are facets that you don't have to do anymore. You don't have to cull through thousands of records to find commonalities of qualitative net promoter score data. You don't have to cull through and find out how many times a word was mentioned or a phrase or an issue was brought up. That being said, I think the world still needs storytellers, and we still need to craft a story about using data, and that hasn't changed. Access to the data, ease of access to the data, ways we capture the data, that may have changed. But you still need to be able to tell a story. It's got to be clear and it's got to be compelling. And I haven't seen an AI that can do that yet.
It makes me wonder too, are those who are coming up in the field or exploring getting into the field or transitioning from another role? For example, we used to see at Cloudbed's customer success who want to make the jump, and given their history with the product and they're just knowing a lot, were good candidates and really wanted to learn more about the profession. Does it mean that perhaps what they need to learn right off the bat isn't quite the same as it used to be, that they could actually make the jump beyond the tedious and get into some more mid-level things that we were never able to do because the volume of looking through videos was too high for us to learn anything else?
No, it does free them up potentially to take on those more, uh, say, lofty, but those tasks that are more part of the research craft and less of the tedium. If you're super junior or just starting out, you may not do the interview, and maybe you're just sitting in the room. But you will have, just as I have more time. You asked me earlier, I would have more time to do interviews. They would have more time to write questions rather than go through endless amounts of data looking for trends. And in some ways, I know there are folks who use AI to start them off with question writing. Hey, this is the prompt. Here's the plan that I have for my team about the goals and the objectives of the study. Write me 10 starter questions. That happens. I'd recommend still going through those questions and
Yeah.
rewriting them and organizing them, and subtle things like sometimes I'll have similar questions in the script that are not identical, but same in their spirit, because I just want to ask the question a different way. Because maybe when you ask that question a different way, now the participant's going to give you an answer that's, more, let's say, meaty. And that happens, time and again.
I think I know the answer to this based on what you were mentioning earlier. I'm going to ask it though, and I'll ask it in a way that kind of looks forward thinking. We've seemed to be more and more, wow, I didn't know it could do that. In a clip of about every 30 days,
Mm.
something new comes out that allows us to take either tedium out of our roles or to glean insights where none were to be found. Research can't be an exception in that. And so if you look 3, 4, 5 years from now, what might a research function look like at an enterprise like Google?
Well, I really just want to say I don't know.
An answer. I'm not sure there's an answer.
I think it's about how we can use it more smartly, how we can use it to enhance our craft, how we can use it to be better storytellers. I'd hope that, the researcher is still at the heart of it.
A recent interview, and I'll have to pin it to the episode, with the head of Figma,
Mm,
talked about that from a design point of view more than a research one, and was really saying that the superpower, if you will, for designers won't really be getting 0 to 1. Figma Make will allow 0 to 1 happen in a matter of minutes.
mm,
What it's going to be is that kind of, and I have seen that AI washing that occurs from 1 to 100, where there's just so much opportunity to listen and be creative and pivot and adjust and do so very nimbly if you stick with what AI gave you in that very first moment. Everything looks the same. Everything's going to be monotone. And perhaps research is similar, where the story is there a nuance to research just by being a researcher? There's something you bring to the table that might just get washed over if you let AI take over moderation, for example.
I think so. I think so in two key components: the moderation, the talking, the follow-up questions, the taking note of intonation, and oh, you seem to, you said yes, but you didn't seem excited about it. Tell me more about that kind of thing. But again, I think in the end result and the presenting that data back and telling that story of, I spoke with 6 people and 4 of them said they were most interested in X. How am I going to demonstrate that? How am I going to show that? Am I going to have, a chart and tick marks? Am I going to have quotes? Am I going to have audio? A lot of people don't have the context, but if they are going through slides and they see one that makes them say, wait, what? How? Oh, that's interesting. That's something that I think you talk about the nuance that a researcher can bring. I think those are examples.
Yeah, those communication, presentation skills. I agree. Crucial, and maybe even more as we move down the AI timeline. Let's talk a little bit about, we'll stay in future land, but talk a little bit about leadership, which is something that you very much bring to the table. Research leaders who are trying to navigate AI adoption, they're trying to stay afloat. And when it comes to, all right, look, the budget's not there to bring on someone new. I've still got my backlog. We've got to get this done. Where is it actually smart to look at AI as the co-pilot you need to get things done and to stay on target?
I think that can be anywhere. I don't put any restrictions on that as long as it makes sense for you and your organization and your team. I remember I adopted tools, software tools that I hadn't used before until a team member said, "Hey, I found this new cool editing software. I found this new cool way to capture data and analyze and segment it." Great. I mean, if you can, a good idea can come from anywhere. A good AI, enhancement can be used at any time. You just have to not rely on it 100%, and you have to temper it, and you have to still spot check it. I mean, that's a concern that I think is universal. We talk about lots of industries. You mentioned hospitality, technology, telecom.
Yeah.
All of them are a little bit skeptical of AI. Someone once said to me, "Oh, I would like it if it works. Trust, but verify, especially with AI."
You've hit on 3 really meaty topics, especially for those perhaps coming into the field or wondering if they should come into the field, of which we have a good deal of viewers on this podcast. You've talked about contextual inquiry, you've talked about storytelling and communication up the ladder. You've talked about being a critical thinker. You look at the next generation of researchers, are there other foundational skills that they should be thinking about? Maybe things that are, I don't know, AI adjacent or need to have AI included in them. I think for on the design side, for example, I think about prompts. I think about if you're truly starting with something greenfield, the way I worked on a greenfield design sprint ideation is way different just 18 months ago. forget 5 years ago, than it is today, where you really can start coming up with rapid ideas in a matter of minutes.
You can. And, we were always told to be patient and skip those early design steps.
Yeah.
Begin with wireframing because it's cheap. You can make wireframes and change them faster than you can change designs, faster than you can change, code. Now, maybe that's not the case. So, go forth, have fun. I would say I would go back to one of the first things I said is that it really helps if the value of research is seen top down. If that's present in your organization, you've got something special. Because if it's not there, you are fighting a battle constantly. I talked to 10 customers. So what? I surveyed 1,000 customers. So what? I think it should be this. And that's out there. The caveat I would have for folks starting out is to determine if you can, hitch your wagon to a star, hitch your wagon to a place where they see the value of and believe in and support UX research.
Well said. I think you've given advice to both those who are in senior or director positions to instill or to shepherd that culture as part of their responsibilities, and also given advice to those who are looking to ask the contextual questions of what does research mean? What does know thy audience mean at this company?
And, you know, everyone has everyone brings some experience to the table within the organization. Salespeople will tell you they know what the customers need. Customer service will say they know what the customers need, and they're not wrong. It's just I'd say it's not complete. It's a little one-sided. Everyone brings some experience to bear. It's about we talk about storytelling and research is about pulling on all those threads to mix a metaphor and to tell a more complete story by hearing a bunch of points of view.
One last question for you. It's a signature question we ask everyone who is part of this podcast, and I'm gonna give you an option to answer it. The signature question is: if you could redesign one thing in the universe, anything at all, any product, any service, any way a government works, what would it be and why? I'm going to give you an option. If you, rather than, I'll switch out the word redesign and I'll insert the word discover or research what the heck is going on with one thing in the universe, anything at all, what would it be and why?
That sounds dangerous. I'll stick with design, and I would make every single countertop in this world 1 foot taller. It's hard to know.
Spoken, spoken, yeah, spoken from the guest who is sitting, we're not able to see height. Yep.
It's one thing I really, really dislike about the new virtual world. Yeah, I don't. Height doesn't really come across on the camera. I am 6'7", and by God, I would love every single countertop in this world to be a foot taller. Let's go with that. I could also do airplane seat design. I could do desks. I could do sofas. I did take my desk, and I don't have a standing desk, but I did put in risers that are about. It's fantastic.
That's a note to burgeoning designers out there to dust off your Design of Everyday Things book and reread that. That's a good one to go back to, a timeless book.
Yeah, he is. That's somewhere on my.
Yeah,
Very
same.
good.
Dan, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Learned a lot from you, as I always do, and would love to have you back anytime.
That's very kind. Thank you, Eric. This is great. Really enjoyed it. Fantastic time. Thank you.